here we are with episode 80. 2021 is coming to a close. So me and Sugar are going to talk about our personal favorites of the year because I watched a lot of episodes from 2020 like a year ago, and then when 2021 started, we kept doing great stuff, and I go back and listen to it. I still post like old episodes too, so people check it out. But we're going to talk about our favorite best of 2021. Shug, hit me with your favorite segment.
Yeah, my favorite that we got into at the beginning of the year. I had to double check and make sure, and yeah, it did start around January when we covered The Bachelor, but in particular, when we did a whole segment on The Bachelor and Race, because it was so many things happening at once that we just made it into one whole segment. And it's scary because months afterwards, I feel like they haven't learned anything. Because you remember in the videos, I would have like the picture of all the bachelors, and it was like all white dudes, and then like Matt James, who was the previous bachelor, the first non-white bachelor, like surrounded by all of these white people. So obviously I've been watching stuff on ABC, and I've seen promos for the next bachelor, and it's literally like another white dude. And they just wrapped up this season with Michelle, who was basically like the runner-up in Matt's season, and people were saying that there was a far better candidate who was 100% African American. I think he ended up like what would be considered like fifth, but he was very interesting, and people were pushing would have liked it if he was the bachelor. But it's just interesting that they went right back to the formula that basically they've been doing from the beginning. And have gotten lots of criticism for, which is just like, all right, you're only picking like white guys. And it's interesting too because I kind of been watching from afar how they've handled the Bachelorette. Katie, who of course I was infatuated with when I was watching The Bachelor. She was the first Bachelorette post Matt, and she ended up picking a white guy, and I guess between now and then they broke up. And then with Michelle, I was very like excited, or I felt encouraged because her final four were all black guys. But then I saw like the promos for like the hometown episodes,
Mhm.
and it was three black guys, and each of them each had like at least one white parent. Which, listen, I'm a biracial person. I'm black and Indian. Nothing against people who are biracial, as long as you at least maintain your African American roots is great. But I just thought it was weird that like the Bachelorette herself, Michelle, biracial, and all three of her candidates are biracial. It's like, to me, the Bachelor is just afraid of not having whiteness involved. You know what I'm saying? Like, you
Yeah,
understand what I'm saying? Like, it has to be
yeah,
some kind of white, like a white person needs to be represented in every facet of the thing. And so like that's why that segment was my favorite, because we did a deep dive in it, and it actually led us to do even more deep dives into other media properties and how they've dealt with race. Like we did
real
Friends,
world.
we
Yeah.
did Real World, and Real World actually too. Like when we did that a couple weeks ago,
Hmm.
Leroy actually tweeted, and he did a live where he actually finally, because I believe his last season with the challenge was the season previous to this current one, so he's totally done with the franchise. So I think he kind of felt like free to talk about it freely without like, oh, all right, now I'm not like getting invited to be on the challenge anymore. I'm not getting invited to do this. You know what I'm saying? And he
Yeah.
finally opened up about the incident that was on that episode that we discussed in the Real World segment, Real World and Race segment, where he talked about it. He said, he really felt like insulted that he'd seen, things we had discussed. People had gone home for far less than what had occurred that night. But going back to the Bachelor and Race, it was just interesting because we never watched The Bachelor before. We would do updates every week, and we knew like, you were watching it as like, an interested person, but at the same time, you couldn't help but think of race, especially with the stuff with Chris Harrison Rachel, who won that season, and just what has come afterwards. So it was interesting. We had like that dialogue about it.
Yeah, interesting. You're mentioning like how having to have like a white part of like background, like there's like a necessity for them. I feel like sometimes they do that to like check old boxes. Like a lot of producers do that, and they're also like, okay, we have to have our core audience. They have to feel a little like connection. So I feel like a lot of reality shows have been doing that, which is a shame.
Yeah, and it's just like to me, I thought it interesting. It was the one when we decided to do this best of. I was just like, because they really haven't learned anything from it. Because I'm thinking like they went right back to like, yeah, let's have this white guy. All these women chasing this white guy, and I'm like, this was the opportunity for you to at least have another African American, have Hispanic person, actual a person dark skinned non-white Hispanic person being represented, or Asian person, Middle Eastern, Indian, like something different, but they went right back to the thing. So it was my favorite topic because now it's like kind of evergreen because they clear like not a lesson's not being learned, and they're very they're moving forward, oddly enough, in this time where representation and diversity is such it's almost like a prerequisite, and they're still failing at it and somehow still continuing.
It's also it's kind of like if you did it once and you're like, all right, we can have a couple of grace period of we do a couple of seasons and then maybe we'll do it again. But you're still like, like you mentioned the poster was like one person of color on the poster. It reminds me of like when you show like every US president and you see like one, Obama. But it's still like since it's like it happened once, it's still like different. And it's not like really like normal. We always talk about normalizing and everything, but it just like it stands out, and it's like that's the opposite of what we're trying to what they should be doing. But yeah, you mentioned Bachelor, how it was like we did it like weekly every episode, and that's the stuff I really was into. That we love, that I love that we do, like a series. So I'm gonna go with my favorite segment. It's from episode 59. This was
Mhm.
early July of 2021, and honestly, I guess July, August, like those are some of like my favorite episodes. I think we really hit like high notes. That was a really good time. So that's the episode, Hello Buddies. So we talked about Paulie Shore in it, which is great. I mean, this is like a long episode. We did like a lot of segments in this episode, but we talked about Paulie Shore, and I love doing our retrospectives and our appreciation for people who are still around. Give them the flowers while they're still here. But this episode also had our first Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, the first part. That's how we ended the show, and that was just a really fun time to doing our little book club. So like from episode 59 all the way to like 64 or 5, we did like a weekly review of a couple of chapters, or few chapters. Eventually it became a video series too. But that was really good episodes for me. If you guys want to go back, if you didn't check it out, episode 59 was a really good one. July 5th, 2021.
Favorite videos, just going off of that, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood was my favorite videos
Mm.
because there's 5 of them. It was in raw footage and audio. It was about like 5 hours, and I basically edited them, I think, over the span of like 2 or 3 weeks, like back to back to back, and it was just fun looking up like pictures of the people that we were talking about, the places that we were talking about, and just the segment itself. As I said, it's kind of gonna be like kind of overlap, but the fact that it got us reading, like setting out times, every night to sit down and read a book, and we like banged through it over a span of like a couple of weeks. As you see, well, if you're watching this,
Mm.
in Mike's background, he's got the hardcover book and the soft cover book. I got the soft cover book, the hardcover books right here. And it would have been cool if the hardcover I came out like a little bit earlier, so we could have also talked about like the extra stuff that was added in there. But in the hardcover book, they had pictures from the movie that were scenes in the book, but had been shot for the movie but didn't make it into the movie. So a lot of things we talked about, like you could actually visually see them in the hardcover version. The hardcover version has a Mad Magazine parody of the show Bounty Law, which was the show that Rick Dalton was on. and it also has a script for an episode of Bounty Law. And it was just cool, like to see to talk about Quentin Tarantino and just like his past works, talking specifically about this work. You know, Brad Pitt talking about Cliff Booth. Like I think it gave us a whole appreciation of Cliff Booth that we had when we watched the movie, but it obviously expanded as we watched the book and as we read the book and we learned more about him. So that's why that was like my favorite video. And I have yet, even though I did them, I have yet to have sat down and gotten to watch all of them, which is something I wish I desire to do at some point, hopefully in the new year.
Yeah, and like I know the whole, not to get back into our whole discussion about the book, the novel. Yeah, like when I saw the film, I was more into Richard Dalton, Dalton, and then in the book, because the character is like a lot of stuff is behind, like it's so like internal. The Cliff Booth character is like way different in the novel than in the movie, and it's like that's the way you're supposed to, like when you watch companion piece where it's like completely different. It's different appreciation for like that character. And again, maybe he'll do some more side stories and like release them because we all know that he's going to be stepping down. I mean, honestly, that whole series is great to me too. I would have brought that up, but if I want to change it up a little bit, again, it's our appreciation videos, like the John Hughes thing. Like I rewatched it like a couple times. I always try to bring it up on my Instagram, like, hey guys, just check this out, and because I think we're at our best when we're talking about like movies. Because me and you, we've written our own screenplays. That's why it was cool to have the example, like the screenplays in the hardcover book, because I'm just like really into it. It's like it's an art in itself. I took like a TV writing the pilot a couple of years ago, like in 2017. I had like a couple of months where I wasn't working, so I was like, hey, let me take a class. And all the money I saved up from like this other job that like sucked, I learned how to write a pilot. I did it in film school too. So being able to talk about like one of my favorite filmmakers with someone who's like on the kind of like on the same level of like understanding, like not just saying, oh, that's a good movie, no, but actually breaking it down. I recommend people just check out the John Hughes video that we posted. It was a couple months ago. And my lame answer also is like the next video is going to be the best too. That's what I'm saying. That's going to be my favorite, the next one we make. Yeah, so check that out. Because like the whole thing, like editing it, you sit down, is what we do, and like we look for clips. And then when I'm recording, I don't really remember like what I'm saying. And then when I rewatch it, I'm like, oh, we made some valid points. Pretty good. And I'm kind of watching it from like a different, like for the first time sometimes. I'm like, wow, like, because a lot of stuff was just like free flowing. But 2020 had on the same level, like so many great videos that I hope people will check out, because they're all up there on the YouTube channel. They're all like, separate in different playlists. So if you're not really into like the beer drinking ones, they're all like, organized. It's like, really great for people to check that out. I stand by them.
So that has been 2021 for Suge Me the Mooney.